The full-time whistle has just gone between the Springboks and the Wallabies, the second test between the two of them in the Rugby Championship. So welcome back to the channel. My thoughts on both teams in this video, my thoughts on the performance and my thoughts on where both of these two teams are after their first two matches in this competition. Really interesting stuff. Have your say down below. Appreciate you clicking on the video and like the video and hit subscribe to the channel as well so you do not miss a thing. Right, I haven't mentioned the result. I've given you a chance to click off, but the Springboks 30, the Wallabies 22. I really enjoyed this test match. I don't think it was exactly a classic. It was quite scrappy in many ways from both teams, in particular from South Africa, drop balls and knock on, a bit of an arm wrestle in a sense, but I really enjoyed it. And I think it's a classic test match in many ways, in that it came down to some pretty small margins. And I think the Springboks just won enough of those small margins. So they got the victory, which frankly they desperately needed. The performance in many respects, I think, is still going to leave Rassie Erasmus pretty frustrated. But in the context of defending their Rugby Championship title, in the context of bouncing back from a heartbreaking defeat a week ago, getting themselves some sort of momentum before they take on the All Blacks later on in this championship, then it's kind of job done. And from the Wallabies, I'll come on to them. But I think they'll be frustrated here, which in a sense I think will be a real frustration, a real reflection, of the development in this Wallabies team. That they have come to South Africa, they have won one of the two games and they will leave still feeling frustrated to a degree because I think of some opportunities that have got away from them in the second test. Which if you'd said to us not that long ago that they'd be coming to South Africa, winning one, losing another, you'd have said that's a resounding success, and it is. But actually, I think their development is a reflection. They will look back on this and feel they should have won this test match. So there we go. Those are my top line thoughts. I'll get into it in a little bit more detail. And I suppose let's start off with the Springboks. I said in my team news video that it looked like a different approach for South Africa. And I think that's what we saw here. I think we saw a Springbok team that just stripped everything back a little bit, went back to basics, went back to a lot of the stuff that makes them so good. And it did get them over the line. Wasn't a comprehensive performance from that point of view, but I think those things were backing their physicality, kicking it more, going to the aerial game and taking the points. Real feature of that first half, wasn't it? Was the contrast between the two sides and how they approached the penalties they got in or near the red zone. South Africa backed Andre Pollard and went for points. They built a score, and the Wallabies went to the corner and didn't quite get enough out of it. Again, small margins, things that sometimes go your way or sometimes your execution lets you down. But I thought definitely from South Africa's point of view, strip it back, go back to basics, take the points and build pressure and build a score. I feel like we still don't necessarily see teams do that enough in Test rugby. There is a lot to be said for taking the points, putting pressure on. We often see it in knockout games at World Cups, but throughout the rest of the time, less so. They did that and it ended up being pretty important in the end because an 8-point victory, those kicks at goal can be pretty important, particular when you look at how clunky they still were, which was still a feature of this game, wasn't it? Really interested for the reaction from Springbok fans in the comments. A win's a win, 100%. You take that every single day of the week and that's the main thing, but still a clunky Springbok performance, wasn't it? I thought they were unable to mount pressure in the way that they usually would. When they did get down into the red zone, yes, I know I've just spoken about how they took the points and put scoreboard pressure on, but drop balls, knock-ons. I thought actually the way the game ended was almost summed it up in a way for the Springboks. On the front foot, starting to put pressure on. Eben Etzebeth, who was great, by the way, coming off the bench, scored a crucial try as well, just to take it out of the reach of the Wallabies at the end. And then with a pass that doesn't go to hand and goes out into touch. There are too many of moments for South Africa, pardon me. They have to tighten that up as you look into the rest of this year. I think they will, but it's definitely been a feature of these first two games, in particular the second half of the first test against Australia and throughout the game today, just not quite being clinical enough, not quite being slick enough. And the effect of that is you don't put as much pressure on the opposition. This is a South African team that have been so good at that for so many years. They don't let you get away with anything. They take their points, they put pressure on, they just squeeze you and squeeze you. And we haven't seen that in the last few games. How much of a concern is that from a South African point of view? A couple of final things to finish on for the Springboks before I get onto the Wallabies, which is individuals. Handré Pollard. Is he still the guy you want at fly half? When it all boils down to it, in the world of Marnie Libok and the brilliant stuff he brings to the game, with an exciting player like Sasha Feinberg Umgomzulu coming into the team and building his experience and understanding of Test rugby, ultimately, when we get to the World Cup in 2 years' time, is it still going to be Pollard that is the best option for South Africa? Because he wasn't absolutely perfect here today, but again, you saw what he brings to this team in terms of an execution of the tactical kicking game and the aerial game, and he's pretty reliable from the tee as well. He's 31, so I think there's every chance we still see him as the main 10 for South Africa for big knockout games when you really want him. Is he still going to be the guy? Is it going to be someone else? Let me know in the comments. Big performance as well. I thought Marco van Staden, certainly in the first half, was excellent. Some of his turnovers were absolutely brilliant. So he was one guy that I had written down here as a big tick by his name. I was pretty impressed with him today. Let me know. Any others? Australia. I thought the Wallabies looked really good today. I was expecting a South African backlash. We got it in terms of the result. I don't think we totally got it in terms of the performance. I thought at times in this game, Australia were excellent. Did they just slightly overplay at times? We saw it right at the end of the game when they went really tight and direct, actually eked out a penalty, which James O'Connor kind of lost his kicking boots towards the end of the game, which are, again, those fine margins between a bonus point or in terms of taking the lead late on. I know South Africa scored that late try which put them out of touch. It would have retaken the lead had O'Connor knocked over that conversion. So who knows whether it would have made too much of a difference. But those are pretty important moments towards the back end of test matches at this level. Did they just overplay slightly for some of the game? I thought when they kept it tight at the end, they looked really good. They got themselves a penalty. Sometimes in the game, they're such a skillful team, Australia. I think we're seeing that. This back line, even when you lose Nick White and Sualihi, and I'll come on to injuries, when you lose Lola Sio and Liner so far this year, Dylan Peach, who's gone off, like they've had a lot of injuries to contend with. They still have such a high skill set, I think, across their team. I love some of the shape and attack that they're running. I felt like at times today they overplayed. But even so, if we look at the Wallabies, it has been a resounding success, these two first test matches against South Africa. As I've said already in the video, a real reflection of that, I think, is the fact that they're coming away from South Africa, 2 test matches against the Springboks with a win at Ellis Park, and they will still feel slightly disappointed about how this test match ended up and the result in the end. I think it's been such an encouraging, I suppose, 3 or 4 games, really, if we want to factor in Test 2 and 3 against the Lions as well. The victory in Sydney, the game at the MCG that could have easily gone their way. These 2 test matches here, I feel so encouraged, I feel so energised about where Australia are. And it's been ages since we've really been able to see that. I hope they keep kicking on in this championship. They should be looking to win both of their games against Argentina. Home game against New Zealand, who knows? With how they're playing at the moment, who knows? I know the All Blacks have a ridiculously dominant record over Australia, but I just think they should feel pretty encouraged at the moment. I thought the line-out was excellent. I think that's been a real feature of what we've seen in these games that I've just mentioned where they've played really well. That's been a really solid set piece. I thought their scrum held up well again today. I know it creaked at moments, but most people do against the Springboks. And I just think they've got loads of good options. Corey Toole comes in on his debut, looks completely at home at test level. Yeah, I think you're encouraged where they are. Just a couple of selection things for Wallabies. Just a couple of questions to pose before I finish. James O'Connor and Nick White. I know they're there at the moment mainly because of injury. I mean, Nick White retired and then Jake Gordon's injury meant he's played here. Missed the second half because of the head injury assessment. Or he went off in the first half, didn't he, with head injury assessment. So missed a big chunk of this game. James O'Connor as well is clearly a guy towards the end of his career, and Lola Sio and Liner are presumably the 2 10s ahead of him in the pecking order. Have we seen from both of those guys, though, in these last 2 test matches, whether it's worth the Wallabies just having a chat with them both and keeping them around for a little bit longer? Like, I guess it's Jake Gordon and Tate McDermott are your 9s, but would you still want Nick White there? I just feel like he's shown real value in these last few games. Looking ahead to a home World Cup, is that going to be out of his reach 2 years' time? The same for James O'Connor, maybe the natural progression for those those two guys who've been brilliant campaigners for Australia. Maybe the time is coming towards an end. I just wonder, based on what we see, whether you still want both of them around for a little bit longer and whether those are conversations worth having. I don't know. What do you reckon? And the other thing, just to finish on, is injuries. Tom Wright, I really hope Tom Wright's injury isn't too bad. He has been so good for Australia. Hate to see him go down. But again, fair play to the Wallabies. Like, Suolihi and White go out of the game with head injury assessments in this one. All right, that happens at this level. That could happen in any game. But you lose Tom Wright. You lost Harry Wilson last week. You lost Dylan Peach last week. You lost your two favourite 10s. So one of them before the Lions tour, another one at the end of the Lions tour. You've lost one of your 9s. Jake Gordon has gone down. Injuries are a part of the game at this level, but I just think the challenges posed towards Australia in that regard so far has been pretty brutal, and actually they've dealt with it pretty well, I think. So those are my thoughts. Give me yours in the comments down below. South Africa, a win, up and running. Still some big question marks over this team, I think, though. Pretty clunky performance, but they've still been able to win this game. Tougher challenges ahead. Australia, I feel really encouraged by. Let's hope they back it up in the rest of the Rugby Championship. So comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.